Okay, so we are going to get started for our conference today. Namaskar, everyone. My name is Rachna Nivas, and I am Artistic Director of the Chandam Youth Dance Company of the Chandam School of Kathak. I am very, very proud to be doing this introduction today. I have been teaching for 20 years now. And this is the first time that I'm getting to introduce such an event. So first, I just want to briefly mention that the Chandam Youth Dance Company is a program that has been around since 2002. And it has always been a program that has really elevated pre-professional training and an opportunity for young dancers to perform at prestigious venues and to have that experience. And it's always been a program for pushing excellence for every single individual and really arming each young dancer before they go to college with training that expands their physical, their mental, and intellectual boundaries through the art, opening a vast world of possibility that really only art can unlock. We know that all of these young South Asian youth are very pushed into excellence in academics, rightfully so. But we like to push the excellence in the arts as well. Having said that, knowing all of that, the last couple of years we have evolved the youth company to become a more formalized youth leadership and empowerment program, because all of this training we know is feeding into these skills. But how can we make this something that's a more formalized program for that? And this conference is one of the first, I think I should say, applications of how these girls are sprouting into tomorrow's leaders. This is the first of its kind conference, virtual, where it is being organized by young Kathak dancers, activating their voices on a public platform. And really the impetus for this conference was that when the pandemic began, we of course switched over to virtual classes, and our classes are 3 hours long in person. 3 hours is a little long for them to be dancing virtually, but we kept our class time. But what we did was that we would spend quite a bit of time sitting and talking to process what was happening, this pandemic. And a lot of incredible conversations were happening. I actually was just often sitting and listening to the girls talk as they process their emotions around the pandemic. And what I learned, I always knew that they were very compassionate and thoughtful, but I did not know how many opinions they had about things happening in the world, and I was learning a lot. And to be very honest, listening to them talk was very calming, because everything I was hearing them say was much more refreshing and made a lot more sense than everything I was hearing the adults saying. And it was making me feel really good that, well, if our future is in these youth's hands, then we'll be in good shape. But we got to let them lead the way. So came up with this idea for doing this conference because I really felt that more people need to hear them. And we can, as adults, we can give them the tools and we can guide them and give them the knowledge. But we need to let them actually lead us now. So this conference, they wanted to call it Who Are We? And the reason for that is that one of the really big topics that they have been discussing a lot and that really frustrates them is that they want people to know that they are not a monolith. That just because they have this label of being South Asian doesn't mean that they are one thing. That they have many dimensions. And that one of the big reasons why they have so many layers, they feel, is because of their training in the Indian classical arts. So that is going to be the big topic for day one, which is why they've called it We Are Not a Single Story. That is their theme for day one. And day two, very appropriately evolved into being all about how is about processing and understanding and learning and engaging to become the best allies they can be to their Black American brothers and sisters and in support of Black Lives Matter. So that we are very excited about that, although it will be a very important and heavy conversation that will be happening tomorrow. And that theme will be finding the ally within, because we have to look within us first before we can actually be allies to others. So that is a little bit of how this conference is going to be. You are not going to see me a lot this weekend. This is all about the girls. I'm really just here for this intro. They're going to be introducing the speakers. They're going to be introducing their own dance sisters for the lecture demonstrations, and they're going to be talking on the panels. So without further ado, I do just want to do a couple of thank yous, and I want to acknowledge that this conference while it was spearheaded by Chandam Youth Dance Company, we're very excited to be partnering with Leela Academy in LA, our sister school that is run by Reena Mehta, my Guru sister, and some of her students are joining us for these panel discussions. We are also partnered with Sarila Academy in Denver, that is run by my other Guru sister, Sarah Morelli. So we are very excited to have her student join us to be part of the panel discussions. And of course, I want to thank my own partner, Sebi Lee, who runs the Chandam School of Kathak, who has also been a part of training these ladies. So I think I am going to bring on Namita Mayer, who will be introducing our first guest speaker for the day. So Namita, can you join, please?
Hi,
Great.
can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Namita Mayer. I'm a rising junior at American High in Fremont, California, and I've been dancing with the Chandam Youth Dance Company for 6 years now, and I've been dancing Kathak as a whole for 11 years. I would first and foremost like to thank everyone for joining us for the conference. Now more than ever, it is important that we rise up to help institute change. Today, we have a special guest. She has been breaking records since she was just 11 years old, winning the Triple Crown for swimming in California at the age of 15. Part of the reason why we chose her to speak is because she inspired us all with her intense athleticism and passion for swimming. We are not a single story, and she's a great example of that. As a South Asian youth, she defies the stereotypes put in place about us in society, showing that South Asian kids are not just IT support and homework helpers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Angel Moray.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Namita, for that introduction. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor. I also was wondering if we have the slides. Oh, perfect. Okay, so over here, you're seeing a little mood board that I made with things I love. And I actually made this yesterday and I really enjoy doing it. So you all should try it. Up here, I included food that I really like. I really like fashion, music, plants and animals, and graphic design in the sense that I designed this. And and of course, swimming, hiking, biking. And together, all of these make up my identity. The reason I was asked to speak is because I am an endurance athlete. I have hiked Mount Kilimanjaro when I was 10 years old. I climbed Mount Whitney multiple times. I've biked over 100 miles. It was actually 110 miles because I got lost. However, my main sport is open water swimming. I learned how to swim in mommy and me classes, and I've grown up in the pool. I remember when I was around 5 or 6 years old, I was looking at the bulletin board of announcements at my pool, and I saw that Coach Mike had swam from Alcatraz. I promised myself at that when I was 6 years old that yes, I love swimming and I'd swim for the rest of my life, but I knew that I would never, ever step in that cold gray ocean and swim 1.5 miles from Alcatraz. Fast forward to now, I've swam from Alcatraz to shore more than 50 times, and I've surpassed my 1.5 limit and I've swam over 20 miles in one shot, the longest being 28 miles. If you were to tell little 6-year-old me that I even stepped in that cold gray ocean, I would not have believed you. So I hope this graphic gave you a little insight to me, but I want to focus my talk today about the experiences in my life that have led me to where I am now and give you a checklist guide based on my learnings for yourself to achieve your own dreams. And I'm going to do this through 3 P letter words: passion, purpose, and perseverance. So for my first P letter word, passion. I hate this word. I think it's a horrible word, and I've been asked my whole life, Angel, what is your passion? I've been told my whole life to find your passion. And in all capital letters, what does that even mean? The word passion is so overused. Rant over. I want to tell you about the time in ninth grade when I went crying to my mom, sobbing because I didn't know what my passions were. I thought that I would never figure it out and that I was going to live the most boring, passionless life. And my mom told me, Angel, it is okay. You don't need to be passionate to be an engineer. I know, typical Daisy mom, right? But I went through freshman, sophomore year trying to figure out what does passion mean? What are my passions? What am I lacking? I don't really like doing anything. I mean, sure, I do swim, but that's not really a passion. I wouldn't do that as a job. All I like to do, honestly, was watch TV and sleep. And for some reason, that word passion loomed in the back of my mind until I totally embarrassed myself in the front of my whole school. And yes, I'm being dramatic. It wasn't the whole school, but it sure felt like it. What happened was I had the biggest crush on the boy in the grade below me. He was really cute, and it was around the time of homecoming. And since my school doesn't have Sadies, Sadies is the dance where the girls ask the guys. For some reason, there was the collective understanding that for homecoming, girls were asking the boys. I didn't have a date because every other girl had chosen who they were going to ask probably a month before. So I thought, why not ask this boy? And the minute I asked his friend to ask for me, he left campus. He just vanished. And yes, I know it was a roundabout way to ask him, but I was nervous, so give me a break. I was standing there with the boy gone from campus. Everyone around me was just staring at me, and I felt so uncomfortable. I was so embarrassed. It was all just a mess. When I went home, I hated myself. I said, how could you do that, Angel? You are so dumb. The whole school thinks you're dumb. You can't go back. But the next day, I did go back. And guess what? No one cared, not a single person. And that's when I realized that we think that everyone is constantly judging us, that people remember all the dumb stuff we do, when in reality, no one really cares. And even if they care that, oh, Angel was totally rejected, does it even matter? Why are they putting their effort into remembering something that I did that was embarrassing? That's low-key kind of embarrassing for them. Like, focus on yourself. We all had to be unapologetically us, do and say what we want because we are special and unique, and there's no point in hiding it. And as I felt the revolution swirling around, the weight of people's opinions melted off. I didn't care what people thought of me. And yes, I still to this day get insecure, but at the end of the day, I brush it off because it doesn't make sense to replay the same embarrassing thing that happened. If I wanted to do that, I'd watch The Kissing Booth or some other cringy movie. And as I started to care less about people's opinions about me, I started to care more about actual important stuff. I started to find my passions. And when I mean passions, I mean things that I loved, things that I cared about, and things that I want to learn more about. I went on a club making spree. I made a club for fashion. I made a club for the environment. I made a club where anyone can borrow fancy clothes for dances, interviews, etc., to save clothing waste and make sure that socioeconomics didn't come in the way of having a good outfit. I spent over 6 months planning and organizing an eco conscious week at my school filled with speakers, activities, which was a success and is now going to be a yearly event at my school. I went crazy on doing everything I loved. And while it was a lot of work, I enjoyed it. And that's what passion means to me, something that you wouldn't mind spending hours doing. And if you're stuck on finding those things you truly love, it's okay. It will come to you one way or the other. But you have to be open to trying new things. You have to be open to putting yourself out there and shrugging off the embarrassing moments because that's how you grow as a person. And yes, easier said than done, but I believe you can do it. Moving on to my next word, purpose. I want to start by saying this word. I want to start this word by saying that our generation, Generation Z's purpose is to fix the many mistakes of of the past generations. And as you know, what's happening right now, thousands, if not millions, of Gen Zers are in the street protesting or signing petitions or calling their representatives demanding change and justice for the innocent Black people who've been murdered in the streets by both police and regular citizens. Police brutality is one of is just one of the many forms of systemic racism. On top of racism and police brutality, we have climate change. We have high hopes of homelessness. We have homophobia, which, by the way, the whole Sadie's dance thing, kind of homophobic. There's so much going on, and whether we like it or not, our generation has to deal with it. And that means that every one of us has to find that problem or problems plural because there's a lot to choose from that just irks us so much that we can't stop fighting to solve it. For me, it's the environment. It's the total joke of America's criminal justice system. It's to make sure that there's equality and equity and ensuring access to education regardless of socioeconomics. I'm sure you all know of an issue that you're totally passionate about. And I want to tell you about a story. I want to tell you a story about being introduced to my privilege and acknowledging that I cannot be complacent and I must work hard for the oppressed. In 2014, I visited Guatemala to learn more about Children International. Actually, this picture in the bottom right corner is me in Guatemala. As you can see, I have a lovely haircut. But around this time, I wanted to use the awareness I was gaining for my swims, my hikes, my triathlons for a positive cause. While visiting Guatemala, I participated in Children International's youth program, and I met two brothers, which are these two boys over here, that we would later sponsor. When meeting the two brothers, we went to their favorite restaurant, Pollo Campero, a fast food restaurant specializing in chicken, much like KFC. They were very excited to go to Pollo Campero, somewhere that I would normally not consider a treat. I learned from them that it is important to not take anything for granted and to be thankful of everything I have. While this may seem cheesy, like something from a Pinterest board, a lot of times in life when we have tests, due dates, or appointments, we forget to take a step back and be grateful that we have the opportunity to do what we love. We have a roof over our head or a job that pays the bills. Also, while in Guatemala, we visited Children International's youth programs. I was able to talk to the children and learn about what they hope to do in the future. They said they would like to be doctors, engineers, or educators. These jobs were not anything new to me. They were jobs that me and my friends wanted to become. These children were just like me and my friends, but they just lacked the opportunities to achieve their dreams. A lot of times we see posters of starving kids next to bus stops, but it never registers to us that these kids are kids that like to climb trees and want to become successful. Instead, we see them as charity cases, as kids who only think about their next meal. The trip to Guatemala opened my eyes to children who were getting a boost so they could play on a level playing field. I decided that I wanted to raise money and awareness for Children International to give support to these kids, to give the support these kids need so that they can achieve their dreams. So far, I've risen over $150,000, and I'm currently in a campaign to raise $1 million. So in 2014, I was 11 years old, and that's when I first found my purpose. I found that injustice in this world that it irked me so much that I did not want to stop fighting to solve it. And since then, I have had many moments of that's terrible and I want to help. But a lot of times I feel like I couldn't do anything. I'm just one person in a gigantic world. What could I do? How could I even make a dent? Which brings me to my next story. In junior year, I took a class called Sustainable Earth Engineering. I was assigned to make a project to report on an unsustainable practice. After hearing about Burberry burning their products instead of selling them at markdown prices or giving them away, I decided to research the environmental impacts of the fashion industry. It was during this project where I learned about the world of fast fashion, harmful chemicals, and the amount of waste the fashion industry produces. It was during this project where I saw photos of last season's clothes rotting in landfills, suffocating wildlife, and clogging water sources. It was during this project where I understood that fashion, a great love of mine, was so damaging to the planet. The 100 billion garments produced in the 1.3 billion tons of greenhouse gas emitted into our atmosphere each year infuriated me and stayed in the back of my mind for the rest of the year. When I'd go shopping, I would only buy clothing I absolutely needed. I started to thrift shop. I stopped shopping at Forever 21, Zara, and other fast fashion corporations. The horror of the fashion industry haunted me, and when I was assigned to create a sustainable solution in that same class later that year, I knew what I had to do. Basically, fix the fashion industry. I thought the best way to do that was by making biodegradable clothing. I stumbled upon kombucha fabric. Yes, it was possible to make fabric out of kombucha, the drink that hipsters at Whole Foods love. And by the end of the project, I had successfully grew and harvested kombucha fabric. I dyed it with beet juice and made a cute little teddy bear, cute little vest for my teddy bear. I think it was strange to me to think that I created something that was a legitimate solution to a huge problem. And up here in this picture, I'm holding the teddy bear with the vest. I've always thought that I am a small individual who could not think of the next big idea. But every big idea has been thought by an individual. It's up to us to use our education, our privilege, and our motivation to start solving these problems. I have found that rooting yourself on in some of these issues gives you a purpose to continue your work. When I'm swimming for 9 hours and I get tired and I want to quit, I think of the kids that I'm raising money for. I think about how I'm helping them do what they love and break the cycle of poverty. Remembering my purpose keeps me going. Kept me going for 13 hours in the water. It's kept me going when I'm up late working on a project just wanting to sleep. It's kept me going when I have to wake up 3 a.m. to go train for a swim. Why? Because I root my purpose in solving injustices in the world that irk me so much that I do not want to stop fighting to solve it. And if I can give you one piece of advice, it is to take advantage of being a young person. When we are young, when you're young, you have the ability to get help on projects instantly. Adults love helping kids. I've always been nervous about asking for help, but I started doing it and I've only been met with mainly kindness and openness. For my school's Eco Act, or Eco Week, I organized, I wanted big name speakers. So I emailed them and surprisingly, they responded. The CEO of Levi's couldn't make it, so instead he sent the head of product design. The CEO of Impossible Burger came to the event after an email invite as well. Adults want to know what they can do to help. So use your youngness to your advantage and start solving those problems. And remember, the worst the answer could be is no. And this brings me to my last P, perseverance. I started with passion, which is one of my least favorite words, and I'm ending with perseverance, one of my favorite words. Perseverance is continuing to work towards your goals even when you are exhausted, even when everyone around you doesn't think it'll happen, And perseverance is the last step to chasing and achieving your dreams. I have images here of dance, clothing, video games, gardening, sports, and writing. Whatever your passion is, you can use it to fulfill your purpose. And with perseverance, see it through and achieve your dream. For example, if you dance and one of your purposes is providing emotional learning to low income students that don't receive that emotional learning because they don't attend preschool, you can persevere through teaching these young kids how to dance, allowing them to release stress and increase the levels of feel good hormones, serotonin. Another example is video games. So many people love video games, but it's also one of the most looked down upon hobbies. What if you were able to use your love of video games and create games that honor diversity or create a championship of some sort that raises money to donate to charity? There are endless options. We should not limit ourselves, and instead we should figure out how we can broaden and expand in what we love to do and do it for a good cause. I included another P word here, procrastination, which I'm very familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of other kids are too. I once heard in a talk that we all have 24 hours in a day. It is up to us to utilize those 24 hours well. And to me, that doesn't mean constantly working, working, working. It also means taking time to educate yourself, to better yourself, taking time to enjoy life. There's that notion that we have to constantly be grinding but what is the point? We only live once, and it'd be a shame if your time on this planet was filled with miserable moments instead of joy. But that also means that within those 24 hours, to apply yourself and make a difference, make an impact, because you can, and for the sake of our planet and future generations, you have to. So don't procrastinate on your life, on your dreams. Find those things you love, find those problems to solve, and get to it. If you truly are doing the things you love, you won't even need to procrastinate because you'll enjoy doing it. One of my favorite cheesy quotes is, "The world is your oyster," because that quote just makes me think of all the things I can do, all the things that I can do and want to do. I don't think I've fully embraced this quote, and I'm working each day to break the boxes I think we have filled, to remove the pressures I put on myself, and fully throw myself into a life of passion, purpose, and perseverance. I want you to know that this world is yours, and it is up to you to make a world that is kind, a world that is creative, and a world that you want to live in. And lastly, I hope you all keep in touch with me. This is my email, that's my Instagram, and that's my LinkedIn. I'm trying to get to 500 plus connections on LinkedIn, so be sure to add me there. I would love to hear what you're doing. I'd love to help you in any way I can. So please, please, please keep in touch, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Um, can I just start off by saying that you are a really cool person?
Well,
Like, like I wouldn't have even thought that kombucha could be turned into like clothes. My mom is actually cultivating kombucha, and there's like a thick layer, and I'm really scared that it's gonna like come to life and like kill me or something.
No, it was totally gross when I was doing it. But what you can do is you can take that thick layer, and if you dry it, it should turn into the fabric that I was talking about.
That's really cool. I'm gonna have to try that. Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you, and a little bit later, if the audience has any questions, please feel free to comment them down below, and we'll be asking them. So you are a triathlete, and you hike, you bike, and you're a really accomplished open water swimmer. What are some of the swims? What are some of your longer swims, and what are some of your most favorite swims that you've done so far?
So my longest swim is I swim around Manhattan Island in New York, and that was 28 miles. So that was my longest swim. Some of my favorite swims have been the swim around Angel Island in San Francisco Bay. So you start on shore and then you swim out to that island, to Angel Island, around it and back. And I like that swim a lot, first because it's called Angel Island, which is my name, but also because it was one of the hardest swims I've ever done. There was a point where I think for an hour or a little bit more, I was stuck in one place and I wasn't moving because of the current. And I was really proud of myself at the end of that because I swam through that and I ended And I finished the full swim and I was really happy with that. But I've also swam in other countries, which has been really cool. I swam in South Africa, and I did a swim also in England and Sweden. So those have been really cool experiences for me as well.
That's really cool. I've been out to Angel Island and it's super cold there, so I can't even imagine swimming. As dancers, a lot of people don't think of us as athletes, but a lot of the feats that we accomplish with our bodies take a lot of training and practice. And we put hours of sweat and blood and tears into the near perfect product that you see on stage. How do you train to push your human body past your physical and mental boundaries? And how do you overcome the exhaustion that comes with that?
So I have various ways of training, but mainly it's just by swimming. Um, During the school year, I used to go out in the ocean. I wake up at like 3 a.m. and then leave the house at 4, get there around 4:35, get in the water, swim for 2 hours, get out of the water at 7, and drive back to school and try to be there by 8:30. That was one of the ways I trained. Another way was like just by swimming in the pool a lot. And the reason I'd have to go so early in the morning is because I wanted that dark, the night training, since a lot of my swims start in the night and then I swim through the night and into the morning. And the reason for that is because the weather is just better in the night. It's much more calm. I also like do longer swims on the weekends, but I think a lot of it is that mental strength.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's just like knowing that you've trained for it and that you can do it, but you have to just focus and get in and just put your mind to it. And I'm sure you've experienced this in dancing where you're
Yeah.
just like in the zone and you don't really notice anything else going on and you're just like focused on what you're doing. So I personally love that feeling. I think it's very like meditative almost. It's I always say swimming is my form of meditation. So it's just being able to remind myself that yes, Angel, you can do it, and pushing through it.
Yeah, our Guruji used to say Kathak is meditation in motion, which it definitely is. You kind of find after like training and dancing for a really long time, you kind of find a sort of euphoric moment, and those are
Yeah.
always the best. Okay, so finding motivation to do things can be really hard for young people. We like to procrastinate and tell ourselves that we're too young or we're not good enough to do something. And we often let those fears get the best of us. You've been breaking records since you were very, very young. So, what drives you and what drove you?
So I started like fundraising for money when I was 12, 13 years old. And the reason I felt like I kind of had the responsibility to do that is because I was working with Children International. So my parents have been sponsoring kids in Children International since I was born, kind of as a way to give back. So I've grown up with knowing about Children International, knowing their work. Um, and I just felt like all this like hype and like publicity about me was getting wasted. Like, who cares about me? Like, why don't I showcase something that's really important? And I think the motivation, I totally feel that sometimes. Like, I'm like, oh, do I really have to do this right now? And there's definitely that feeling where you're like you just don't really care. But I think what I have felt is like once I find those like big problems that I'm like, this is terrible. I can't believe we're still living in a time where these things exist. You kind of get in that mindset to like, okay, what can I do to help solve these problems? And another thing is that we have this and I think like our society has this mentality that we always have to be productive, which just leads to burnout or exhaustion. So if we focus our time on like specifically achieving what we want and then um, kind of leaving some time to enjoy life, to self-care and all of those buzzwords, I think there is the motivation does come back. But it's definitely like something you have to push yourself to do in the beginning. I know for schoolwork, for me, that's where like my motivation just leaves. But I like remind myself, okay, so if I do the schoolwork, what is it going to do for me? And then I kind of like I try to focus on why this is going to help me, and then I slowly gain that motivation.
Yeah. We always get jokes about, I don't know, personally for me, you know that there's Indian guys on YouTube who explain science and math subjects, and everyone refers to them, Khan Academy and things like that. Most South Asians aren't really known to be athletic. So have you noticed that you've had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously by the people around you?
I think, yeah, I've seen that. I know on TikTok a lot that like happens too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of weird stereotypes around Indians, but I think for me, it was when I first started swimming, I wasn't taken seriously because I wasn't a fast swimmer. I was, and I still am. I'm not a fast swimmer. I'm pretty slow. And the reason so when I told my coach, hey, like I'm thinking of doing Alcatraz, he said like, no way, you can't do it. It's not gonna happen. And it was like, oh, that it felt bad, but I did do the swim, and I was like, got you there, buddy. So I think that it's difficult for me, but from personally, I've been really lucky, and since I've grown in the Bay Area, there hasn't been too much stigma, but I definitely have seen that type of stigma elsewhere. And I think um just personally, since I've been doing like open water swimming, which is something people don't really know about, I haven't gotten that stigma when it comes to like different sports, I definitely feel like there is that like, oh, you're Indian, like go do your homework, instead of like you are an actual good athlete, like go pursue that.
Yeah, I feel like living in the Bay Area has made us very spoiled. um, what do you think is the number one thing that the next generation needs to realize for us to make the world a better place?
I think the thing is we need to realize that first of all, we're not we're not enemies. Like everyone, we shouldn't be pitting ourselves against each other. We should be working together and like create a community, which I think is happening, but it's kind of slow, and there's still people that there's we need to like overcome all the like racism, homophobia, like all the like phobias there are, and just come together as one generation, which I think is happening, but it's happening slowly. The second thing I'd say is kind of like going back to what I said in this talk is like knowing that you do have the power to make a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
and I totally feel like, okay, I'm just one person. What can I do? But when you're one person and you start a movement, when you start, maybe get your friends on board, they get their friends on board, you guys can do something great. And it's just about starting and finding that problem and that solution that you want to solve.
Okay, I have some questions from the audience. There's a question by Serena. I'm gonna try to pronounce your last name, but I'm gonna apologize right now. Chitre, um, how do you persevere and push yourself to keep going when you are at your breaking point?
So I remember one time I was doing a swim. It was swim from Catalina Island and just to shore, and it was like around 20 miles. It was my first swim of that length, and I was near the shore, but there was some current. I don't know what was going on, but I was just like, I was really just thinking like, I'm gonna give up. Like I can't do this. Um, and then I just kept going, and I thought like to myself like, when I get out of the water, like if I were to get escorted out of the water and my swim to be canceled, um first I thought about like how disappointed I would be in myself, but then I also thought like the reason I'm doing my swims is because I'm raising money, and I felt like if I were to end my swim early, it would be um a disappointment, and also like it would not it would affect the money I was fundraising. So then that's why I try to ground myself in purposes larger than myself, because I feel the obligation to do what I said I was going to do so I can fully fundraise the money. I can fully raise awareness. So really what drives me is knowing that there is there is a purpose larger than myself, and I need to work towards achieving that.
That's great. Thank you so much for coming to our conference. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
I hope everybody finds their passion and uh, their perseverance and uses Angel as an example that even though we are young, there's still a lot that we can do. Are there any more questions? I don't think there are. Let me just check. I don't think there are. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It was such an honor.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I was told that I just gave a whole speech while on mute. Um, I am going to just say it one more time. I want to thank Angel for an incredible, very inspiring speech. We have all learned so much from your speech today. And thank you, Namita, for doing a wonderful job of interviewing. And we are going to have an event coming up very soon in about 15 minutes. We have one of our graduating seniors from high school is going to be doing a lecture demonstration. Mallika Potter is going to be dancing. So go and you can take a break, get some food, get some chai, and come back at 1 o'clock. See you soon.
Namaskar, welcome back everyone. My name is Shara Kudi and I'm part of the Chandan Youth Dance Company. Today for our Kathak lecture demonstration, we have Mallika Potter. She's a graduating senior who has been learning Kathak for the past 9 years. She began her training with Seema Mehta in Mumbai, who founded Chandam Nritya Bharati India, and since then, Kathak has always been an integral part of Mallika's life. After moving to California in high school, Mallika continued her study of Kathak in Bay Area with Mumbai's sister school Chandam under Rachna Nivas. Outside of Kathak, Mallika competes in policy debate and will be heading to UC Berkeley in the fall to study computer science and economics. Mallika has been a member of the youth company for 3 years, and I could not be more thankful to have her as part of our youth company family. I've had the privilege to dance with her for the past 4 years, and she has shown her dedication and love for the dance every step of the way. Mallika is extremely passionate and thoughtful about everything that she does, and I admire her dedication to this art form. With that being said, I present to you Mallika Potter.
Thank you, Shara, for that introduction. Namaskar, everybody. Like Shara said, my name is Mallika Potter. I'm a graduating senior, and I've been studying Kathak for the past 9 years now. I'm a part of the Chandam Youth Company, the group that's been organizing this conference, and I train under renowned Kathak artist and performer Rachna Nivas and our assistant director, Hana Mukherjee. None of this would be possible without them, really, and I'd like to just say thank you to them for believing in me and for putting in so many hours, both before and even during the quarantine, to mentor and guide me. Kathak, like Shara said, has always been a huge part of my life ever since 3rd grade, and it's something that I've always been able to count on. And after moving from India to the Bay Area for high school, I'm so grateful to be able to continue training here. And it's amazing to see how dance really manages to transcend boundaries across oceans and cities and countries. And really today, I'm also able to share my love for dance with all of you guys across the boundaries of countries through Zoom and YouTube, which is amazing too. So I'll be doing a Kathak lecture demonstration today. For those of you who don't know, Kathak is one of the 8 Indian classical dance forms. Originating in North India, all the way in 400 BCE, Kathak combines tayari, which is technique, laikari, which is rhythm and math, khoobsurati, and nazakat, grace and subtlety. And because this is a lecture demonstration, I'll be explaining everything that I do along the way. And even though this is virtual, I'd encourage you to ask any questions you may have. We'll have a Q&A section in the last 10 minutes, so please hold on to any questions that come up, and then I'd love to answer them after you type them in the chat in those last 10 minutes. So with that, let's get started. I'll be starting by singing the Guru Shlokas, which pay homage to the 3 deities, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and Maheshwara, the destroyer. I will then invoke the 5 elements, wind, water, fire, earth, and sky, which help center us before our dance. And finally, I'll be doing pranam, which puts us in the right mind space before dancing and also evokes a strong sense of gratitude for the history of the form that's been orally passed down from so many generations of teachers to disciples or gurus to shishyas, even before we begin dancing. So with that, I'm going to start the Guru Shlokas. And I'll be setting the noise that you'll hear right now it's called a tanpura. That'll help me keep the pitch while singing. Sorry, one sec. Technical difficulties a little bit. There we go. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Brahman Akasha Vayu Teja Apa Prithvi Tat Yato Hasto Stato Drishti Yato Drishti Stato Manaha Yato Manaha Stato Bhavo Yato Bhavo Stato Rasta. Om Te Te Dhin Da Dhin Dhin Dha De De Dha Dhin Da Dhin Dhin Dha Dha Dhin Da Dhin Dhin Dha Na 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 Dhin Da Dhin Dhin Da Te Te Dhin Da Dhin Dhin Dha De De Dha. So that was the Guru Shlokas and Pranam. And now I'm going to be showing you Tatkar, which is the basic footwork of Kathak. So Tatkar has 8 steps. It has right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right. And the bowls that we say while dancing, or the words that we say, are ta, te, te, ta, ah, te, te, ta. And what we do in Kathak is we don't just randomly dance these steps of Tatkar, we overlay them onto a rhythmic cycle. So today I'll be dancing in the rhythmic cycle of Teen Tal, which is a cycle of 16 beats. And I'll start off with the first speed, which is called Ta, in which I'll do 1 cycle of Tatkar in 1 cycle of Teen Tal. So that'll be 1 cycle of 8 steps in a 16 beat cycle. So if you do the math, I'll be taking a step every alternate beat. Then I'll do double of that, so I'll do Digun, which is 2 sets of Tatkar in 1 cycle of Teen Tal. And I'll be doing 2 times 8, so 16 steps in 16 beats. Then I'll do the 3rd speed, which is Tigun, 3 sets of Tatkar in 1 cycle of Teen Tal, 4 sets, 6 sets, 8 sets per cycle, 12 sets per cycle, and 16 sets per cycle. And then I will even attempt to do 24 sets per cycle. which is 24 gun. And that's actually 24 sets of tatkar in one cycle of tintal. So again, if you do the math, that's 1.5 sets every single beat. And 1.5 times 8, that's 12. So I'll be doing 12 steps per beat. And then I'll also be attempting to do 32 gun, which is the 32 speed. And there I'll be trying to do 16 steps every single beat. And 16 steps times 16 beats, that's going to be 256 steps in just one cycle. With that, let's get started. And the beats you're going to be hearing are the sounds of the tabla. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm going to count the beats in the cycle and tell you when I change beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, double 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, offbeat, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, third speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, fourth speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, offbeat, 5, 6, 7, 8, on, 9, 10, 11, 12, offbeat, 13, 14, 15, 16, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 8 speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 speed, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 24, speed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 32, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 1. And that were the speeds of tatkar in ascending order. Let me just turn that down a little bit. Okay, so next I'll be demonstrating the Netavari Tihais. And Tihai is a rhythmic pattern that repeats itself 3 times. So an example of a Tihai could be daka daka hey, daka daka hey, daka daka da. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that pattern of taka taka hey, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, repeats itself 3 times. And that's essentially what a Tihai is. And so now I'll be dancing Tihais, but they'll be slightly longer than this. And again, they will be in the same rhythmic cycle of teen tal. And Natavari refers to the Natavari bowls, which are tigidha digadiga. And these tihais, when you see me dancing them and reciting them, you'll see me say the words tigidha digadiga a lot while dancing. And there's also one tihai starting from every single beat and ending on the start beat, which is known as sum. But for today, I'll be doing the tihai starting from the first beat, from the third beat, and from the fourth beat as well. And I'll also be demonstrating the different lineages, or gharanas, that are a part of Kathak. I'll be demonstrating two of them, Lucknow and Jaipur Gharana. So named after two cities in India, Lucknow is a softer and more nuanced gharana, while the Jaipur Gharana is known for its intense footwork and warrior-like quality. And I'll be doing the last composition I'll be doing it in two different ways. The first time in the Lucknow Gharana, and then the second time I'll be doing it in the Jaipur Gharana. And both ways are pretty challenging on their own, but they're two different styles or two different gharanas is what makes them different from one another. So I'm going to speed up this, the lay a little bit and start. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, Okay, so those were the Natavari tihais. Next, I'm going to be doing the Natavari tihais again, but this time I'm going to add another layer, a layer of Kathak yoga. So instead of just reciting the bowls of the composition, we're going to recite the numbers of the tal, and that's actually much more difficult to do because they're two separate rhythms. So last time I was reciting exactly what I was dancing. Now I'm going to be reciting the beats of the tal and also adding another layer of singing. And singing is extremely challenging to do while dancing because of the breath control that you can probably even tell right now that I'm struggling a little bit with. So I will be doing it in Kathak yoga. Now I'll be demonstrating a few compositions in drutlea, which is the fastest speed of tinta. And for these compositions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do these compositions in two different versions. So the first version is going to be through traditional Kathak, and the second version, I'll show you the very same compositions, but I'll be introducing an element of abhinaya, or storytelling, in the second version. Kathak actually originally comes from the word katha, which means story. And Kathakas, or Kathak dancers, are in essence storytellers. So I'll begin by reciting the composition. Let me just speed up to drutlea. I'll be doing the second version now, but this time I'll be doing Lord Krishna and Radha and the abhinaya between the two of them. And just to point out something, when I do a false stop like that, that means I'm switching characters. The third composition. bow and arrow. Same composition, just with the abhinaya. Da din din da da din din da na din din da din. Da din din da da din din da na din din da din. And those were the two compositions. So now I'll be sharing another story with you. So I'll be doing another piece of Abhinaya. And it's also about Lord Krishna, but this time it's about Lord Krishna as a little boy. And before I get into the story that I'll be dancing, I just wanted to share a short thing about what Abhinaya means. So Abhinaya is one of the most difficult aspects of dance to learn, probably for me at least even more than the fast technique. And part of that is in Kathak, when you act or you storytell, you're playing all the characters at once when you dance. And so you have to be able to switch between them and still show all their emotions. And with the help of my teacher, I'm really starting to begin my journey into Abhinaya and trying to delve deeper, a little bit deeper than choreography and into the emotion. And so for the story that I'll be dancing, to give you a brief overview, I'll be dancing about Lord Krishna, and he's just received a new toy, which is a wooden ball to play with. And known to be playful and a bit of a prankster, Krishna calls his friends to play with his new toy. And while stealing the ball from one another, they're throwing it and catching it, and it falls into the river Yamuna. And his friends are immediately terrified because everyone knows that the ferocious demon snake Galia lives in the depths of the river. But Krishna reassures his friends and then dives into the river to retrieve the ball. He grabs the serpent by the tail and raging Galia, and the battle begins. So without further ado, I present Galia Daman. Just get the music started. So that was Kalyadaman. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much to everyone for coming to watch today and for being a part of my journey. And if you have any questions at this point, please type them into the YouTube comment sections about anything I did in my dance or any question that you might have about Kathak, and I can just answer it in the next 5-10 minutes. Okay, so there's a question about how do you balance student life with your dance life, and what message would you give to upcoming young Kathakas on carrying forward Guruji's legacy? So for me, I think student life and dance life, there's a balance between the two of them, but they don't always have to conflict. So I think that treating dance, we talked about this earlier actually, but treating dance as much as you would treat a sport, or in fact even more, giving kind of dance the emphasis that it needs helps me balance it with school life. And I also think another thing that I do personally is a lot of times it's easy to get yourself to do things when there's a deadline. So I know in terms of school, people procrastinate, but you always get it done before a deadline. And for me, I set those same deadlines in my dance. So I say, okay, by this week, I'm going to aim to get this done. I'm going to be able to do this in Kathak Yoga, or I'm going to be able to learn this piece and try to improve my abhinaya on this piece by this week. And so setting those tangible goals in dance helps me balance it well with school and not sort of let it go if I focus too much on one thing or the other. And as for the second part of that question, what message would you give to upcoming young Kathakas on carrying forward Guruji's legacy? I think that's a really important question. And I think the best answer, honestly, as Dadaji would say, is practice, 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 and then do more practice. Because that is, I think, honestly, the best way to stay connected to dance. And make sure to try and, again, practice a lot, meet with your guru sisters, your teachers, try to do it through Zoom, whatever way that's been going on right now. Continue that and keep practicing and spread the message about Kathak, because promoting and preserving this ancient art form that survived for so many years, the only way that it will continue to survive is if we continue to spread the word about it. Okay, next question. Can you explain what abhinaya is and why it is important to Kathak dance? Yeah, so like I said in my a little bit earlier, Kathak actually comes from the word gatha. So Kathak is originally a storytelling art, and actually the history of Kathak says that a lot of the dances and the compositions that you see came about later. So storytelling is essential to Kathak, and Abhinaya essentially means storytelling, and that aspect of Kathak is important because even when you're dancing particular steps, you have to really delve into the emotions of the character. It's almost like acting. It is basically acting, and you have to balance those with your dance. And otherwise, it's kind of, you're not engaging the audience as much. How much time do you invest in your riyaz? That was the next question. So for me, I think it does vary sometimes, but I try to do at least a few hours every single week. So maybe 4 to 5 hours every week I try to fit in. Sometimes it's easier to do it over the weekend to fit that in that spot. But during these last couple weeks in preparation for this lecture demonstration, it's been more like a couple hours every single day. But yeah, I would try to do a base minimum of at least 4 to 5 if you can every week. And then, were you the one singing? Yes, I was the one singing, at least trying to sing while dancing. And just follow up, how do you sing while dancing was another question. Honestly, I think it's a lot of practice. We practice this a lot in class, and we do it in a group. So it's something that we've been trained to do by all our teachers. They make us sing when we're not reciting. They tell us to recite. And so it's just something that comes with habit, and you can learn to do it if you do it in class. And then one more question. What is it like dancing in a youth company? Yeah, so it's honestly really, really fun. Kathak is originally a solo art form historically, but I think doing it in a group brings a whole new aspect to it, and I think you're all dancing together. You're still all trying to emote individually, but as a company, everybody's movements, you want them to be matched, and you kind of have each other's back at all times. So if somebody messes up, like I know there'll be somebody else who will have my back, and nobody's going to notice it because we're doing it in a company, and that's really, really nice to have. And I just want to spend one more second on this because outside of class 2, dancing in a company is like dancing as part of a big family. And I think like the Chandam Youth Dance Company is a good example of this. Like we're super good friends outside of dance, which I think makes us dance better too. How do you perfect all the little details in your dance? Yeah, so that's something I'm really working on. I tried to make sure my hands are not sloppy. It's a constant battle. I don't think you can ever fully perfect it, but I think looking in the mirror helps. I don't practice in front of a mirror, but I sometimes go to my room and then I just do the hand movements a couple times again and again to get those small details, get them down. And they're really important because my teachers have been telling me this more recently, but it's really, at the end, it's those small things that make the dance better, but I'm still definitely working on it. I'm nowhere close to perfecting it. Yeah. Anything else? Okay, I think that's about it for today. Thank you so much again for coming. I have one quick announcement to make. So as part of this conference, we've chosen to donate to the Black Women's Blueprint organization at blackwomensblueprint.org in support of Black Lives Matter. And we chose this organization because they help provide resources to empower Black women in today's society and take steps to combat gender and race disparities. And this is a really important cause for us, and we think that it's essential in achieving a world of liberty and equality. And if you're able to, please consider donating to this organization. Again, blackwomensblueprint.org. We'll be sending out a link later, and if you are able to, again, we would really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.
Thank you, Mallika. I know that we don't have a live audience, but if you sitting at home can please give her a round of applause, or at least, in spirit. Um, this is not easy on so many levels. First of all, dancing by yourself when you've been dancing in a group ensemble for so many years is already a new phase in her journey that she is beginning. But then on top of that, you have the pandemic, and she is having to prepare for it completely on her own, of course, with guidance virtually. But as you can see, she's having to do it all on her own, run her music and everything. So we are all, I think, learning a whole nother level of independence. So please do bless her. She needs all the blessings from her elders. And I want to thank everybody for watching and supporting these girls. So I am going to just move us along to our next portion, which is our panel discussion, which is our final event for today. And before we do that, I am very excited to introduce to you the Assistant Director of the Youth Company, Hana Mukherjee. Hana, it's really special because Hana actually herself was a member of the Chandam Youth Dance Company, of actually the very first cohort when it was started in 2002. So Ahana trained directly with our Guruji, Pandit Chitresh Das, and went off to college, to UCLA, and came back, and is now a teacher and staff member at the Chandam School, and has come in to be assistant director. And I just want to say that it has been a great pleasure to work with Ahana, to train these girls. She cares a great deal about them, and she is a dynamite dancer herself. So it's really been a pleasure for me to watch her own growth and journey in her dance. So I would like to bring Ahana up to introduce the panel, as she will be the moderator for this panel.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Always a pleasure to work with you, and always a pleasure to be a mentor to these girls. I'm not sure if you can see my video or not.
I can.
Great, fantastic. So welcome to our very first panel discussion for the Who Are We conference. Today's topic is South Asian culture in the West, breaking the monolithic view in our community. And the thematic content for today is really around surrounding South Asian identity and how do we define ourselves? How do others define us? And how do so much of the youth in the States and even around the world on an international basis who are grappling with this cross-cultural identity, being often first generation in terms of coming directly from immigrant parents, how do they grapple with being South Asian, about South Asian American, and really kind of exploring the nuances and the complexities behind that. We know that culture is, at least in the United States, it's a huge melting pot. And oftentimes cultures that are deemed as foreign are often considered the other culture. And they're typically portrayed in a very specific way. And oftentimes it can be very one-dimensional, whether it be through media, art, music. And today's panel discussion is really going to be about exploring what are the inauthenticities that are present in South Asian culture and how it is portrayed. How can youth and the next generation really lead the movement and propel themselves towards kind of bringing that authenticity back? And with further ado, I do want to introduce our panelists for today. Very exciting bunch of girls. We have Samika Saxena, an 18-year-old from Fremont, who is a member of the Chandam Youth Dance Company. We have Shara Kuti, 15-year-old from Fremont, who is also a member of the Chandam Youth Dance Company. Samika Agarwal, 15-year-old, also from Fremont. member of the Chandam Youth Dance Company, Dia Chatwani, 16, from Fremont, another member of the Chandam Youth Dance Company. And finally, we have Sanshi Panigrahi, a 14-year-old from LA who is a student at the Leela Academy. Welcome, ladies. We are very excited to have this discussion with you today. So I'm just going to get started right off the bat. We know that the South Asian culture is portrayed in a very specific way. There are stereotypes, there are myths, there are inauthenticities. One example of South Asian portrayal in media very recently, the show Never Have I Ever by Mindy Kaling, right? It's portraying the South Asian girl, the South Asian high school student in a very specific way. So jumping right in, I want to ask you all about what are some examples that you yourself experience or have witnessed about. And we'll make this a very organic discussion, so just unmute yourself when you want to speak. And I don't know, was everyone able to hear the question? I can repeat it again. So the question is, what are some examples of inauthentic? Unmute yourself and let me know if I'm cutting in and out, because it might happen. Cutting in and out. Okay, I will repeat that question again. What are some examples of inauthentic representation of your South Asian culture and your South Asian identity?
Go, guys.
I think just from starting off in the point,
I won't call you Dia. Go ahead.
Just from the representation in media or just when you talk to other people, I think when we think of South Asians, especially South Asian girls, maybe here in our community in the Bay Area, we always get that representation that yes, we are intelligent, we are very smart, we have like this one pathway that we need to become doctors or engineers, or we have this single pathway that is like built for us by our parents. And I feel like there's not a lot of room to express yourselves of other interests, to pursue other career paths. And I feel like off the bat, that's a stereotype that a lot of South Asians get usually. And I would say that's a big one.
Yeah, I think people assume that, like, for example, if someone were to go to college, they assume that they're doing like CS or mechanical engineering, but there's just so many other like opportunities and like things people do. Like, for example, Angel, she's like an exception. She swims and she's an amazing athlete. People don't think that South Asians are great athletes. And that's one of the bad stereotypes that we should fix.
Yeah, kind of to add to that, like people are stereotyped kind of from the beginning, so we have to fight and break that stereotype where people, they are smart and they like to do mathematics and science, but we also like to do other things like arts and dance. And like Angel, we are sometimes athletic.
I think to add on to that, you brought up the topic of one-dimensional. I think as South Asian, you can be both. You can be like academically also, excelling, but also excelling at the arts. And I think one thing people don't realize is that there's so much heritage and so much history in the arts as well. These ancient dance forms, Kathak, for example, has been lasting for such a long time and is still continuing to be done today. And for me, as an Indian American, I'm invested in my academics and I'm also invested in my dance. I have been committed to coming to class since the past 13 years. So what I basically want to say is that you can have both. It doesn't have to be just one thing that everyone is categorized into. You can have academics, you can have arts, you can have sports. There's no, one frame.
Yeah, there's no limit. Like, we can do as much as we want, and also it adds on like extra pressure that people our parents and other people assume and want us to do like CS and mechanical engineering, of course, and that pressure is causing more stress, and it's bad for our mental health, physical health, and our energy, our vibe is totally off.
I think there's also the stigma associated with if you don't pursue this specific path of what your parents are going to plan out for you, or if you're not going to be a doctor, engineer, then you're not going to be successful in your life, or you're not going to get a good job and make enough money to live in the Bay Area or be successful. And I feel like that's a stigma that we need to get rid of, because there's so many other career pathways out there which are going to be successful, and if you're interested, then you should be able to pursue them.
Yeah, wonderful. Really talking about and really kind of aligning with our theme today, right? We are not a single story. The South Asian identity isn't defined only by academic success or success in your careers, right? There's multifaceted layers. You guys are just like, and pardon the analogy, but you are onions that are like waiting to have these layers peeled, right? Obviously, you're not onions. You're very beautiful. You're beautiful onions. So how does that make you feel, knowing that you are subject to this type of criticism, whether it be from your parents, your peers, other members of your community, other members outside of your community? What type of expectations does it put on your shoulders?
I think if you have that constant pressure that you need to live up to some expectation and you don't achieve that, there's definitely going to come with like, okay, I'm going to be disappointing my parents, or I'm going to be disappointing someone. And I feel like that's something that stays with you, especially in a hyper competitive environment such as the Bay Area, where a lot of us are pushing for the same goal. I feel like it's really important that we need to remind ourselves that there's other things that don't matter as much. It's like if you don't have straight A's, or if you don't have that 4.0 GPA, like it's okay. And I feel like it's a really big thing that sometimes doesn't register with us, and that like really hurts some of us, but we don't realize that we need to forget about those small things.
Yeah, like Dia said, it kind of like it takes a toll on you kind of because it kind of plays with your health, because people they're getting all this stress from their parents, their peers, their school, and it messes with your mental health a little bit. It makes you feel like you always have to be at your best, and that's not really what we need from people all the time.
Yeah, it like builds up in our head. Like like in addition to our like other people like pressuring us to do that, it's also like we don't want to disappoint them, and we feel guilty if we were not to like like follow their expectations. So it just, a lot of it is also just us being hard on ourselves too, and over hard especially. Yeah.
What do you guys think really prompted these types of stereotypes or these types of molds to be formed, at least for the South Asian community?
I think the first time where this came up was probably the model minority stereotype, where every Asian immigrant is considered as someone who is academic, works hard, only does academic things. And that's basically where I believe that all of us are being placed in as of now, where we're getting this pressure from. It's the stereotype all around us of, and as Asians, we are meant to be academic.
Yeah, I think that's a really big mentality that we take, that has a toll on ourselves and like for ourselves, because I feel like personally growing up here in the Bay Area, like living in Fremont where my school is 93% Asian, I've haven't heard anything less. Everyone around me also has that same mentality that Asians need to focus on school. That's what they're good at. That's what they need to be successful in. They need to go into this field, this pathway. And even coming from parents who have grown up in the opposite kind of diversity, where they were one of the only Indian kids in their whole school of whites, and then moving here, I still feel that pressure because I'm surrounded by that environment.
Yeah, Sharon, thank you for bringing up that really important term. It's the model minority myth, right? So thinking that certain minority group, typically it's the Asian minority group, is supposed to be the model example of what an other group or a foreign group is supposed to behave and act like and say. And that's really puts a lot of pressure, but it's also a form of it's like a mild form of ostracism, right? You are kind of conditionally expected to behave a certain way. And kind of along those lines, why do you think a model minority myth is bad for society? Shouldn't have something like that.
Well, I think based on history, the reason why the model minority myth was created was to fence off the civil rights movement, the African American civil rights movement. They used the model minority myth as a way of saying, "Oh, Asians are doing all of this. Why can't you do that?" And in a way, it puts off the African Americans. So based on that, I feel like the myth itself puts other minorities down. It doesn't allow other minorities to grow and just makes the Asian minority as something that is so amazing that everyone needs to live up to.
It's like if these racial minorities aren't living up to the standard, they only have themselves to blame, but then that slowly turns each minority against each other.
And I think that can perpetuate, like within the whole, South Asian minority, can also perpetuate like a sense of like false pride, so to say, like, okay, like I'm here because of like this, and I'm bound to be like smart in academics and good at everything, even if they're not. And that could also hinder that minority, that self, that to say that, so much is happening and it's only because I'm this person, rather than working hard individually, because there are many individuals from many minorities who work hard and are at places not because of that, but because of what they put in. So I think it brings back a source of like false pride, I would say, probably.
Yeah, it undermines the hard work that other minorities put in. And it also adds extra focus and pressure to us, which should, and the focus should be evenly spread out and allow for us to be all treated equal and think we're all equally intelligent and have equal amount of perseverance and potential to be successful.
Yeah, like we're kind of put into a stereotype where like if you are smart, it's like, oh, well, you're smart because you're an Asian, you're not working hard, or you can be working harder, where you might be working your hardest to get to where you are.
Really important what you just said there, Sanchi, about you're smart because, right? There's always a reason as to why you are a certain way. It's not because you can't be just smart. It's smart because you're an Asian, or you're this way because you're from this community or this group of people. And then I want to touch base on what Dia mentioned about really pitting minorities against one another. You're inherently creating this conflict and this discord. Talk to me a little bit about your guys' thoughts on that.
Well, in addition to there being a lot of competition among just like students and generally getting into college, there's just going to be extra competition on top of that among the minorities, which is just unhealthy for everyone mentally and physically.
do you think it forces minorities to have to work a little bit harder than, say, those that are in the majority? Kind of, tying that back into what we were asking Angel about. Does she feel like she has to prove herself because she's a South Asian and she's a girl? She's a woman of color.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Hana Didi. I think that definitely you have to put in 10 times more effort, because being a minority already comes with its baggage. You're already dealing with so much, but I feel like when you're faced with going against another minority or having to stand out and take that extra step, it puts a lot more work on you.
Yeah, and I think adding on to Dia, like relieving that pressure or like shedding that sort of away, that sort of, inner thing that you're good at academics, or that, like that also again takes effort, because once that opinion is formed, taking out the opinion away and erasing that is harder than, when you're meeting someone and you introduce yourself for the first time, for example, you don't want there to be a pre sort of judgment to you, right? You want to talk about your own accomplishments because you worked hard and you did something, rather than already being judged by someone because of, whatever minority you belong to or whatever area. So
Yeah,
definitely it puts a lot of pressure.
Yeah, like on applications to like camps, colleges, schools, there's an option to fill out like what's your race. And like a lot of people made that optional, but it shouldn't have to be optional. Like we should be able to say our race and still be treated and thought of as the same and as the equal as everyone else. And like it's not fair that people have to feel bad or have to think about not putting that like option or not like answering it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's very very astute observation, because oftentimes, whether it be, in your youth when you're applying for camps and colleges, but also when you're an adult and you're applying for a job, there are, you have to fill in your ethnic background, and maybe there is inherent discrimination with somebody whose name appears a little bit more ethnic versus John Doe, So definitely a lot of discrepancy and disparities. I want to turn the conversation a little bit more onto your guys' personal experiences. Knowing and understanding the model minority myth, can you talk to me a little bit about if you yourself feel or have personally experienced any form of moments in your life where you have felt you've had to work harder, or you've had to prove yourself, or you felt like you weren't good enough?
I think I'll start. Sorry, it was on mute. But one thing that I've often experienced is like if I try to reach out to my own like cultural and I try to like gain knowledge. Like for example, I know how to speak Hindi because I've been speaking it at home, and that's the language we speak at home usually. So if I am meeting with a friend or just meeting someone and I'm speaking in Hindi for some reason, or I say that I speak in Hindi to you, then the other person might go like, oh yeah, I'm not about that, or like, yeah, I understand it, but I don't speak it, which in sometimes is understandable, but then sometimes can make you feel like, what are you then in comparison to that person? Like, you know so much versus like someone else doesn't know that much, but you're both, the same sort of like ethnicity. So I think doing things that are more related to your culture, like for example, learning traditional Indian classical dance, Kathak, or speaking Hindi, or things like that, people often assume it's because like, oh, your parents must have put you in this class because, why not? That's your culture and you must have been forced into it. Rather than, I actually really enjoy speaking Hindi because now I can communicate with so many of my relatives that I would not have been able to otherwise. Or I like learning Kathak because it empowers me. It's not just an Indian dance class that I'm forced to be part of, but it's like a leadership group that has helped me develop confidence in dance and otherwise too. So I think clarifying that and making people understand. And I have like one of the most supportive parents. So also shedding that like away that like, oh, parents or like South Asian parents just like hammer down their kids and like make them or force them to do things. Like my parents are completely not that way. They've always been open to what I want to do, and they listen and they're understanding. So I think explaining that to people is definitely like a struggle sometimes, especially with like I learn traditional dance because I want to, or I speak Hindi because I want to, rather than because I'm like forcefully put into something. So that has been, I've often heard people like say that to me.
Yeah, when I was younger, my parents tried to take me to Hindi classes, and I refused. And I regret that decision because I'm unable to communicate with all my relatives and my grandparents in India. And Kathak has like given me a way to like explain to them what I'm doing. I understand Hindi better and India's history, so I can talk about it with them. And it's also given me the confidence, like Samika said, to talk more in class and be open and as like, participate in class and say my opinions, and has given me more confidence to speak on this panel. Yeah.
And what about how your teachers perceive your identity and your heritage and your background? Are there because of who you are? Did I cut out? Let me know if I cut out. You didn't hear my question.
Yeah, I
Okay.
couldn't hear.
I cut off. Okay. let me repeat that question. The question is, what about how your teachers perceive you because of your cultural background and your heritage? That your teachers kind of have inherent expectations? Do they not?
I think there's a lot of situations, especially in the school that I go to, which, again, like I mentioned before, is 93% Asian, that the majority of our teachers are white. But they still, and for them, they understand that stereotype, like, okay, Asians, you guys must be smart, you study like the textbook a year in advance, like you understand what the material is. You automatically assume what I'm teaching, right? If you want to go ask for help, I've been in situations where you ask for help, but they will say like, I thought you already know this, or you should have already like known this, or reviewed this. And there's a lot of times where they automatically assume that you know things, or that you should get things done, or that, oh, you must have probably like already like talked about this or have knowledge about this certain subject, that you don't. There's some learning experience where you don't get the full learning experience because you're in situations like that.
Yeah, kind of like what Dia said, like on the first day when the teacher reads your name on the roster, they already have like an opinion formed about you. And so when you later go throughout the school year and you might not understand something and you go to the teacher for help, they kind of shoot you down saying like, oh, well, I figured you would already have at least some basic knowledge about this. And it kind of takes away from your learning opportunity in that area.
Just like how Dia said, because we're in like a school where it's 92% Asians, the teachers expect a lot from you. I remember walking into my math class and he was like, oh, you guys are all Asians. Usually I would set the stress level to this high, but it's going to be this high. I expect you guys to do a lot more than normal. And I know you guys all do extracurriculars and you do your science club and all that, so you should be fine in my class. The thing about that is it automatically pushes every individual, that being the few non-Asians in the class and Asians in that class, to start following and pushing themselves to that expectation. They start taking more classes, not getting the same learning opportunities in school, and pushing themselves so they can reach the teacher's expectations. That is, school is not a way. School is where you learn, not where you reach your teacher's expectations.
Yeah, like some teachers, they assume that I'm already studying hard, I'm already doing tutoring and extra classes. I don't need the extra help from them. So they dedicate their time to like other students. But that like I'm not necessarily like great at math or chemistry or biology, and I need extra help with that. And the best way to learn and understand how the tests are going to be is talking to the teacher. So I just think that it's unfair that teachers are biased against us in that sense.
Yeah, and then to think about it in kind of like the opposite extreme, right? Whereas if you're not Asian, if you're other minorities, you are perceived as somebody who's not capable of accomplishing and achieving something, right? Right. The expectations are either too high or too low. And so I think oftentimes minority groups are constantly chasing the expectation, either trying to topple it or trying to say, look, I'm more than what you think I am. I'm more than a single story, right? Like your guys' theme for today. Samika, you brought up something interesting about, learning your language, or choosing to do dance because you want to do it, not because there is a notion that your parents must be, on your case and on your back. They must be forcing you to learn about your culture and your heritage. So thinking along those lines, and just for the audience at home that wasn't a part, but this conference, we actually, prior to starting it, we had a intimate roundtable discussion. And the theme for today's roundtable discussion was about how being a Kathak dancer impacts your identity as a South Asian girl, and really kind of thinking along those lines. So I kind of just want to bring a little bit of that conversation into this panel discussion as well. Tell me about how, and Samika, you also brought up the fact that, as a dancer, you are able to really delve into your levels of confidence and things like that. So being all students of Kathak and really being immersed in this art, how do you think it shapes your identity in the way you are kind of grappling with the fact that people have these expectations of you? What does it make you feel like doing? Does it, do you feel like it makes you a little bit more resilient? Do you feel like it makes you more proud?
I think it definitely makes you more proud because you've been, or at least it makes me feel more proud that I've been learning Kathak for a long time. And I think the reason is that it's not, for me, it's not just like a dance class that I sort of have to attend like these many times a week and then like I'm done and it's kept away. It's become like, it's one of my like highest priorities when I come to class to be ready to learn or ready to dance, or if I have something else to catch up with that before so that this time I can completely devote to this activity. And I think the other thing that goes with Kathak is that if you make it a priority for yourself, you are able to make it a priority for those around you as well. So I've had people like, if for example there was some party or something happening on a Sunday morning and I know I have dance class, then I do say I have Kathak class, not just a random dance class. I have Kathak class and I need to be here during those times because if I have a performance coming up or even if I don't, this is rehearsal. This is the opportunity I get to be with all of these people and to do something I really like doing. And I think because I said it that way or I say it that way, other friends and people around me understand that this is something that she really takes seriously. And so either if I can't come to that event, they won't be like disappointed because of whatever reason, or that they'll understand that, yeah, this is something important for her and she needs to attend this. So, sometimes it just comes up in normal conversations. I'll be like, I have a performance coming up, and then, someone will be like, oh, you learned Kathak dance, don't you? You have a class this day. I'm like, yeah. So I think once you normalize it for yourself and you get it out that it's not some like activity you just do because, it's an extracurricular, so why not? Something you enjoy doing. And if you express that to other people around you, they really understand that too. And I understand that for some of my other friends who have various other activities. I think the idea is just to, instead of taking it as, oh, this is just some like ancient traditional class, to be more like, oh, well, this dance form is ancient and traditional, but yet it's come through so many years. So, so much diverse history that's happened for centuries, and yet it's sustaining here. Yet we're sitting here, we're coming to class, we're dancing, and we're learning all of these new styles. Proves that it's not just some like old thing that is being randomly continued today, but all of the, all of the different expressions or different steps can be attributed to modern context to today. It's a living story, basically. So I think you understanding that importance, you conveying it to other people, makes other people understand what you feel and how happy you feel doing it.
Yeah, Samika, thank you. Really liked your use of the word normalizing your heritage, normalizing your culture. And so kind of now pivoting, we've really talked about a lot about what are the things that are kind of, stereotype, what are the things that are not really working right now, what is inauthentic. Now, what can we do to ensure authentic representation? What is authentic representation? Let's actually start with that. Let's start with what is authentic representation, and then we'll move on to what can we do to ensure authentic representation.
Well, just to start off, we should have more panels like these talking about the issues and how we can fix them and how we feel about it and our personal experiences.
Yeah, and really kind of casting our net wide, right? With these types of panels, really trying to get as many members of the community from diverse backgrounds as much as possible to really listen in on this. Other thoughts?
I think
what is authentic representation?
I think a really big thing that I've talked about before, I've thought about is you needing to educate yourself, because I feel like without you really understanding what you want to be, what you want other people to think. So you need to really find out, okay, when someone else thinks of Kathak or thinks of Indian heritage or something, what do you want them to think? And I feel like you need to find that out for yourselves, because if you learn that, you can easily translate or talk to them about this specific topic, because I think education and of course dialogue for continuous people is really important.
Yeah, and I also kind of think that the more you talk about it to other people, the more other people know about it, and then like it's kind of normalized, I guess, in a sense, because people are more exposed to it that way, so it doesn't seem as alienated to be of a different culture.
Yeah, we should start off by like correcting people and our friends and talking about exactly what Sanchi and Dia said. Yeah. Start off small and then big.
And in the kind of vein of correcting people, what is it that you want people to know about who you are as South Asian American youth? So the question of the title, or the title of the conference is, who are we? So if somebody were to ask you that in terms of your South Asian identity, how would you want yourself to be represented? It's a pretty big question to answer, but
I think the biggest thing for someone to say, like, who am I, is I want people to know me just like in school, even like I want people to know like me just outside of my studies, or just outside of like what I do in school is a really big thing. And that could be for a number of things. It could be for my dance, for any sports that I play, or any other activities that I enjoy doing. I want people to know that there's more to me than just what they see in the classroom.
Yeah, like a lot of my friends, they assume that, oh, they're like surprised that I play tennis, and they're surprised that I'm good at art, and they just think that, oh, I just put all my time and effort into studies, and which is why I get good, decent grades, but I want people to know me for what I'm like, what is exceptional about me or what's like special about me, and just like not know me for who I am in the classroom, but also outside the classroom.
But I also think that it's our responsibility to have that happen. I feel like you can't just expect someone to know these things about you. You have to directly, if you really want it out there, then you promote it or you tell other people about things, or you try to get other people into them as well so you can share this interest. And I feel like that's one of the really big things that we mentioned, that you need to educate yourself on what you want people to know so you can properly deliver it.
I think one response usually, like if someone asks you, who are you would say like your name, you go to this school and you're doing this or things like that. But I think in addition to that, like Dia talked about this other side of your like identity, that to also be said. Like I feel like if someone asks me like, okay, who are you, or like where do you attend school, or now college, but where do you go, I would say like I'm, hi, my name is Samika. I go to this school and I also learn Kathak, an Indian classical dance form. And I've been doing it for this long, and it just doesn't help me develop my dance skills, but also out of dance. And I think it kind of feels like a little different to think about it that way or to say something like that. And it's not something that you can just right off the bat do. But I think after making yourself aware of this heritage that you come from, and you taking the time to educate yourself, like Dia said, is when you can really have a conversation. Because if you don't firmly believe in what you're saying, like other people won't believe in it either. So I think the first step is definitely you. And then, after that sort of framing, I think the question you asked is really loaded, like, who am I? But I think I would still have to think about how I would answer that question for sure. It's not, something I can just say right now because I'm not at that level either. But yeah, incorporating different parts of what you do when you're answering that question rather than the academic life. Like, okay, I speak Hindi, for example. Like, I feel like sometimes that makes you feel like, oh, is she too like Indian or more than American or things like that. And I feel like that is like a sort of stigma associated within the community too, like within my peers who might not speak the language or who might not be that informed. And the reason for that could be that, like, even South Asian Americans themselves, like, there's me who has been, studying Kathak, who knows about history and everything. But then there's also other people who don't. And I think first educating our own community, and then we can, that community can then reach out to other people who are, for example, not South Asian American to say what they believe in. But I think getting that firm belief yourself requires you to be the one reaching out to all of this knowledge that's available to you.
So let's thank you for that, Samika. So yes, the who are you is an incredibly loaded question, and it is a question that you spend your entire lives trying to answer, right? So I will be answering it a certain way at this point in my life, and you will all be answering the point in your lives that you guys are at. So what I would like to do is I will actually ask you guys this question again at the very end. So I'll let you guys have some time to think. And I want you to answer in a way that, who are you in this moment in your life? How, if somebody were to ask you, somebody who you didn't know at all, came up to you and said, who are you? How would you respond to them? So think about this question over, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts at the end of our discussion. So let's kind of pivot now into what can you do to ensure authentic representation. And I want you to think of it not just from a high level standpoint, but also kind of on a day-to-day basis. So think of it both at the micro scale as well as the macro scale. Think about what you can do as an individual and what you can do as a community and what you can do for even maybe on a global scale. Because then now I want to start talking about the action and the change that you as youth, the next generation, can really implement.
I think one really big thing that Samika had just mentioned also was having more of these kind of panel discussions or having these group conversations which really get you talking about things that you wouldn't normally be talking about or be thinking about, and it's a really great way to not only educate yourself but educate your people around you and the people in your community and your friends that on a normal basis you wouldn't usually mention or talk about. So I would say these kinds of things are really important.
Yeah, and the more we have these type of panels, the more we can promote it and the more people will watch it and possibly participate in it as well. People from around the world even, hopefully.
Yeah, because I think that these panels, they're a really good way to get our word out for things that we believe in, things that we think that we need to fix. So, and also using like social media because it's just such a big platform and we can reach so many people that way. And it's just a really good use.
I think in one way, you said the word authenticity, and I think if you relate authenticity to Kathak, really going behind the history and not, what not just watching a performance and just believing that that's all to it, I think is one thing that you can get. Like authentic Kathak dance is what, you have to actually take the effort to read about it, to really like go to a company's website, for example, to like Chandam is does authentic Kathak. So what is there that I can do to educate myself? When I say I mean like, if I had no knowledge of Kathak, what are things I can do rather than, just opening some YouTube clip? Because we have all of these things to our advantage now, like Google and YouTube, but the authenticity factor really does get like, hidden away because there's so much that people are doing nowadays that you don't really know what is like, authentic and what is like fusion or different factors like that. And I think taking the time to educate yourself about, what it is that you see, what is Kathak, for example, right? Like you might have seen something in a movie with all of this glamour and costumes and everything, but, dance is dance. The costumes add to the dance, but it's not the other way around. It's not like the dance is adding to like costumes or what jewelry you wear. Like if it is authentic dance, then even if you wear a simple outfit, people should be like, surprised by what you're doing because there's so much authenticity to Kathak beyond the level of like jewelry and makeup. There's so much math that goes behind. When you're dancing, it's not that you're just, you're just dancing to a song. It's you really have to keep in mind what beats are going through as you want to, for example, if there's a thal that's a 16 beat cycle, you want to make sure where you start and where you end, where this part of the choreography begins and things like that. It's not easy. I think one thing people might think is like dancing is like not equivalent to a sport because it's like it's just dancing. It's some wishy-washy thing. But when you actually think about it, and I think Kathak in this way is very challenging, honestly, because it's not just about the physical strength of attending a 3-hour dance class, which itself is a big deal, which requires practice. But I think also the mental focus you need to have while you're doing these different things, because it's not simple as like just taking 27 chukkers or 27 turns, but it's also, the timing behind it, what you do in the middle, what beat do you start, what beat do you end. All of those things are what add to the authenticity. And again, doing it, dancing with a manjira or you're singing, those are not usually things you see at a daily basis or a normal level. And I think sometimes we as Kathak dancers might take it for granted. But I think when when you all, the public, see it, obviously there's so many moving parts, so many elements. And I think as Kathak dancers, it's our responsibility to really put it out there, whether it's through social media, for example. When we promote other things, we promote club events, why not our performances? And aside from performances, something we're doing in class, because I think we work really hard in class or during rehearsals. All of those factors, all those really tiny details that we might not realize, I think proves that authenticity to other people and shows them just really how much work it takes to be authentically doing Kathak. Kathak I just took as an example because I know a lot about it, but I mean the same way in other elements.
Yeah, just how like Samika explained that, it makes much more sense. Like verbalizing our thoughts to actually form an opinion is important, and that's why like these open discussions and panels are so powerful and are gonna help us fix this and actually say who are we and get rid of the model minority.
Yeah, Samika, you brought up something really interesting. You said, we are doing authentic Kathak dance, right? And it's true. Like there's so much information overload right now, whether it be through dance, music, YouTube, Instagram, social media. Like, you could have somebody doing yoga and they could be like, oh, I do authentic yoga, right? Like, there's so many ways that people will try to kind of say they're doing something authentic, but authenticity in a culture or in a heritage requires a lot of understanding and sensitivity and going deep into it, right? To become really immersed, to become experts in what it is that you're doing. Why is it that you're doing that, right? So we're talking a little bit about what we can do. What about while you're trying to ensure authenticity? You might face judgment, right? So, and Shara, I'm going to use you as an example, but you mentioned that you have been called a coconut. What is a coconut? Do you want to explain that to us?
So a coconut is a whitewashed individual. You're white on the inside, considered white on the inside, and brown on the outside.
So why were you called a coconut?
There are many reasons why people are called coconuts, but the reason why a lot of people are considered coconuts is because we're not considered to be.
Shara, I think your audio cut out a little bit.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes.
So for me, I'm considered, or I was called a coconut because I didn't speak an Indian language just like Samika had, but that doesn't make me a coconut. I was, I guess, ostracized because of that. And the thing is, language is language is an expression of showing your culture, but so is dance. Kathak has been a way for me to show dance, and that's another way to show authenticity. It's not just Hindi or other type of languages that show authenticity through yourself, but it's also Kathak. The expressions and the culture behind Kathak is so important, and it's another way to show the authenticity, again, as I said, to other people.
It's absolutely important to recognize that you cannot show. Question from Namita on what would be the first steps to take to show people what authenticity really is. And I'll just kind of circle around everyone. I'll start with Sanchi.
I guess, like I said before, the first step would definitely be to reach out to as many people as you can, because the more people that know about your cause, in a sense, the more people can help you. So I guess that would probably be a good first step.
Samika Agarwal?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, for example, for Kathak, we can invite more people to our performances and actually talk about this. And like we said before, just social media and panels and just talking to people in our school and our friends just to fix this and make them understand what authenticity really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually agree with Samika a lot. I think there's so much that you can say and there's so much that someone could see from other things, but really inviting them to one of your shows to see, okay, what is authentic about your specific Kathak school, right? There's so many other Kathak schools in the Bay Area, but what is specific? Why is yours considered authentic? And I really think that them seeing that for themselves and then you giving them an explanation or pointing things out, which shows that, you know, this is their first step in being authentic, is a really big deal.
Shara?
As the other people had said, another like a way to show your authenticity is to be passionate about it. And also, as Dia said before, educate yourself. When people see that you're passionate about something, as also what Samika said, they'll take you more seriously. And everything that you do, like, you should be more passionate about it. Like in social media, show how passionate you are. Express yourself through social media. Show the authenticity and educate yourself more about the dance itself.
Samika?
I think everyone brought up great points, but to add on, outside of the performance scenario, because I feel like sometimes when you invite people to performances and you might like not follow up afterwards or things like that, then people might mistake that for like, oh, this person, you know, just wanted me to show up for a performance or something. But I think outside of the performance setting, one thing we can definitely do is like, at least with friends we might, you know, we video call people nowadays so much because of the quarantine, but like we could show them something that we're dancing right at home rather than, you know, in that elaborate setup. It could be something you're just wearing a simple outfit and you're doing, you know, tatkat or footwork that requires that mental agility as well to quickly transition between doing a number of beats in like, you know, the cycle. And I think showing that to people and really breaking it down, not just dancing through it like you would or going on autopilot, but really talking about what it is that you're doing and breaking that part of the dance down, for example, can make it clearer for other people to understand. Because I think there's definitely things we can do while talking to other people, but I think showing it to them in a smaller setting can also be really helpful outside of like the whole performance area. But you know, maybe you're video calling a friend or something and you decide to share something with each other. One thing you can say is like, oh, hey, I was just practicing this, or like, what do you think, or things like that. That again, go back to the point of like normalizing it and making it known, because you know, we have study groups where we call for like help with homework or like, you know, classes, but like this is also a class. And I think one thing that definitely I do is like outside of like friends outside of Kathak, like even with Kathak, we keep in touch so much. Like I'm probably messaging Shara about things like every week that are either related to Kathak or not related to Kathak. And I think that's definitely another step to take to show that it's not just about the performance and like that one performance in like this month, but also what you do outside of the performance can be a huge real view to people of what you're doing and what you're learning.
Yeah, very multifaceted ways to do it, but also very simple steps that you can take, really engaging with those that are in your closest circle first, and then kind of expanding from there, and really taking a pride in your culture and your background, and you know, leveraging that, using that upper hand to you know, show people what it is that who it is that you all are, what it is that you guys all do, right? We have a question. I think this is directly for Shara, but I feel like anybody can also answer it, because maybe this is like a test run of what you would do if you were to encounter some form of a judgment or obstacle. So the question is, what did you do when you were called a coconut?
So the thing is, at that age, I went home and cried. Yeah, that's what I did. But if I were to think about it more now, it'd be something that I would stand up to and say, that's not who I am. And I would tell them about how much I'm doing as a Kataka and as an individual who's proud of her own culture.
And what would you guys do at your age now if somebody came up to you and said, hey, you're a coconut? How would you respond to something like that?
I honestly think that sometimes it'd be better to ignore it, but the fact that like they called us a coconut is just like something that I wouldn't like let go of, and I'd have to like fight back, but I wouldn't want to trigger something like that. And I would do exactly what Shara did and said. Yeah.
Sanji?
I mean, first of all, if
Oh, Samika.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Just first of all, someone like you know you've been dancing Kathak, right? Someone calls you a coconut, that itself is like not factually correct, because if you were really that like, a coconut, you wouldn't be doing something like Indian classical dance. Like that's not something you would be doing. Not to say that only that person can learn it. Like of course other people can, but that's just an example of you, especially at this age, not when you're like, 5 years old and you're maybe in some class, but the fact that you're still at this age continuing to do something can't literally be just because your parents are forcing you into it. That is just an illogical argument in itself, that you're only in this because someone is pushing you to do it. Because as teenagers, there's lots of activities that we might have started earlier, but we don't continue through all of them for various reasons. And the fact that you're sticking to it does mean that you're literally not a coconut, because if you were, you would be sort of like completely, outside the conversations regarding culture. So I think that's, again, a really important thing to recognize. I just wanted to go back on that, the fact that you're forced into something. But, at this age, at like 15, 16, 17, you really can't be, like forcefully made to do things, right? Like you can be put in a class and like not attend it or things like that. So if you're really doing it, and if you're really like talking about it, that has to mean that you're invested in it completely. So I would say that that argument doesn't work for me. Your statement is a fallacy. I would reply that. Yeah, if I was a coconut, I would not be doing Indian dance if I was so whitewashed. So, yeah.
Dia?
I think agreeing with what everyone has also said, I think when you're given if you are called one, or if you encounter a situation where you have this happen to you, I think a really big thing is to, first of all, like address the situation. I mean, I don't think that term would come out of like context or out of nowhere, but I really think that it's important to say, to do deliver, okay, what actually, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say that, because I think Samika is correct. I don't think that is kind of something that you would say to someone, because as someone who is invested in my heritage, who is invested in something that I've been doing for a long time, who's proud of my culture, I would fight back, or I would disagree with the person.
Sanji?
I've never personally been in that situation, so I don't really know what I would do, but I know I would definitely be mad and a little upset, because nobody should be saying that to another person. But I would probably maybe, say a sentence or two about how that's wrong and you shouldn't do that, and maybe fight back a little, but I don't know, I haven't been in that situation, so.
Yeah, and then kind of just tying it all in with the fact that you were all dancers doing Indian classical dance. What I find interesting is the role of art in situations of this type of conflict. Tell me what your thoughts are on whether you think that dance and music and art distinguish between races. Like Samika, you said, like, it's not only South Asians who can do Kathak dance. Anybody can do it. Did you want to say something about that?
Yeah. No, I think overall there is this automatic assumption that South Asians should be doing Indian classical dance just because of the heritage or the arts. But I feel like that is, of course, it's not necessarily the point, but I feel like it's also our job to reach out to other races or other minorities and really bring them in or really push out to their interests. Because personally, like, maybe this is just me or some other people, but I feel like I don't really promote to others because I don't really know others who would be super interested in our art form. But maybe that's something that I need to change. Maybe that's something I need to start doing.
Yeah, it's one thing to take immense pride in your background and culture, but it's also one thing to be open and share that, because you never know who's going to be touched by it. And oftentimes you'll be surprised by the people who you touch because they may not actually have a similar background to you, right? So, okay, any other final thoughts as we wrap up today's discussion? Okay, I will go back to my question, and I'm going to actually just go around and I'm going to ask you guys to give me 3 adjectives on who are you at this very moment. That'll be our final closing for today's conference. So I'll give you guys, I'll start with Shara.
Well, going off everything today, the 3 words I would use is strong, Indian, and American.
Wonderful. Lovely. Samika Agarwal?
I'm not sure. I would, of course, my 3 adjectives would be like Shara's, but at the same time, I just want to be known as like Samika. Like, I'm South Asian, but that doesn't define me. I just happen to also want to do Kathak and learn Hindi as much as I can. So, 3 adjectives. Can I just say like Samika?
That's fine. I mean, yeah, that's okay. That works. I just gave 3 adjectives because it might be a little, some people might have adjectives immediately in their heads, but if you need to give a few phrases, that's also fine. Sanshi.
I don't know. I think Shara said it best. I'd probably say independent would definitely be one of them because I try to be as independent as I can. Maybe strong, like Shara said, and then definitely, you know, maybe like Indian American is one word. So, yeah.
Okay, Dia.
I think adding that phrase that we talked a lot about today, American from Indian descent, which is a really big one, and then I would say confident and independent.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Samika.
Well, the other Samika stole my name, so I guess I had to think of other words. I mean, where other situation would you find? I haven't heard Samika as a name except for Samika Agarwal, that too in a dance class. But I would say humble, helpful, and ready to learn new things. That's not an
Lovely.
adjective, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for this really amazing conversation on breaking the monolithic view of the South Asian identity. I want to also thank Mallika Potter for her beautiful lecture demonstration, as well as our guest speaker, Angel Moore, and her interviewer, Namita Mayer. Thank you to all of you, those that are watching at home, for attending our first day of our Who Are We conference. Please tune in tomorrow. Tomorrow's theme is all about solidarity and allyship. Princeton Asia Fellow in Black and Brown Solidarity. We'll be seeing a lecture demonstration from Samika Saxena, who is on today's panel, and how racism and colorism is present in the South Asian community due to cultural biases. So please tune in tomorrow. Please be on the lookout.
Hana Didi, I think you cut off.
You're on mute now, I think.
I think, I don't know how much people heard of that, but but hopefully I didn't drop off too early. Last but not least, I do want to mention that we are using this conference as a fundraiser for the organization Black Women's Blueprint. This is a transnational advocacy organization empowering members of the African diaspora, especially young women and girls. We will be posting a slide at the end of this with a donation link. Please contribute what you can. It would be very much appreciated. We'll just bring on our Rachna Nivas to say any other closing remarks, and then we will conclude for the day. Thank you, panelists.
Girls. Oh. No, I'm not muted. I'm unmuted. And for support, thank you everyone for supporting these girls, for attending today. We will see you tomorrow at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for our second guest speaker and all of the activities. Thank you and namaskar.